Guys, how you doing? You doing all right? Good. Hey, let me ask you a question. Have you ever thought about a what-if scenario where you lose one of your five senses and you have to pick which one to lose? Like taste, smell, touch, hearing, sight. Or maybe it's the opposite. You only get to pick one to keep. Like which one would you choose to keep? Now, I know that sounds kind of weird to think about something like that, but I'm guessing that you probably already have thought about that because it was an icebreaker question for something, or you just think of weird stuff like that. I don't know, maybe that's you. But just think about that for a second. Some of you have lost your sense of taste and smell over a period of time in the last 2 years. Have you not? It's real, it's okay, it's a safe place. You know what that's like. Or think about this. What would it be like to lose your sense of touch? And how weird would that be? Not being able to feel anything? Or what if you can't hear? You lose your sense of hearing. How hard would that be? Can't listen to music. Can't hear the wind blowing through the pines up in the mountains. Love that sound. It's one of my favorites. You can't hear a conversation that you're having with a loved one or a friend. That would be incredibly hard. Now, there can be a positive side of that for me. I wouldn't have to be listening to the bickering of my kids whenever we're deciding what game or movie we're going to watch. But on a serious note, if it's me and I'm choosing, I don't want to lose my sense of sight. Like that's the one I'm keeping, being able to see. Can you imagine how hard it would be if you can't see? All the things that you can't do and can't experience. You can't see the world. You can't see your kids as they grow. Can't drive. All kinds of things that you wouldn't be able to do or experience if you can't see. Not to mention you're more vulnerable than if you lost any of the other senses. Like every one of us knows the pain and the frustration that comes when you stub your toe because you're looking around a dark room trying to find a light switch, right? We all know that pain. Or if you're walking around your house barefoot and you can't see, do you know what becomes a little landmines all over the place? Legos, yes. You all feel my pain, every parent, right? Those things are like just come out of the carpet when the room's dark and you're walking around with no shoes on. But think about this seriously. If you can't see, there's all kinds of things that you can't do, and now you're vulnerable to the things around you that you can't see. According to the NCBI, someone with visual impairments, they have an increased lack of mobility, independence, and even academic achievement. On top of that, you are increasingly more likely to experience falls, injuries, fractures, mental illness, cognitive deficits, and social isolation, all because you can't see. I mean, that's pretty rough, right? And you're not experiencing that if you can't smell something. And this is 2022. Imagine this 2,000 years ago, what that would be like. I mean, put yourself in first century Israel and you're blind and you can't see. Most jobs in that day were all physical labor jobs. There were no work from home options. You weren't jumping on Zoom meetings. That didn't exist. You're doing physical labor. That's what you're doing. So if you had any kind of crippling disability or disease, like you couldn't see, then you are at a severe disadvantage. And when I say the word severe, what I mean is life-threatening. It's life-threatening because there's no social safety nets back then. There's no Medicare or Medicaid. That doesn't exist. There's no disability insurance. Forget that. If you can't see, you're out of luck and you're on your own. You're basically forced to beg now. On top of that, there's a social stigma associated with it. In first century Israel, if you were blind, that was considered to be a curse from God because of your own sin. So now you have to beg. You're at the mercy, you're utterly and completely at the mercy of everyone else to give you something so that maybe you can survive to see tomorrow. But on top of that, on top of the humiliation of begging, the people that you are begging to believe that this is your fault because of your own sin and your own screw-ups. It's a pretty rough spot to be in if you can't see. And that's what it would have been like. If that was you, do you think you would understand the gravity of your situation? I mean, you're not going to view that like you sprained an ankle. You know, hey, like I sprained my ankle, it hurt, it's pretty annoying, but I'm going to heal. I'll be back to normal in a few weeks. For the most part, I can live a normal life. That's how you're going to respond to a sprained ankle, right? But if you think that way because you're blind, if that's your response to being blind, It's fair to say that you don't understand the situation that you're in. You're being forced to beg. You are completely at the mercy of everyone else to give you something so you can survive another day. You're humiliated because you have to do that, and everybody that you're begging to thinks this is your own fault. If that's what's going on and you approach it like, well, it's just like a sprained ankle, it's fair to say that you don't really understand what situation you're in and you don't really understand what you need. I'm going to introduce you to a guy named Bartimaeus. Bartimaeus was blind, and he was asked $1 million question from Jesus himself. It's in Mark chapter 10. Here's the story. Then they reached Jericho, and as Jesus and his disciples left town, a large crowd followed him. And a blind beggar named Bartimaeus was sitting beside the road. When Bartimaeus heard that Jesus of Nazareth was nearby, couldn't see him, he just began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." "Be quiet," many of the people yelled back at him, but he only shouted louder, "Son of David, have mercy on me." When Jesus heard him, he stopped. And he said, "Tell him to come here." So they called the blind man. "Hey, cheer up," they said. "Come on, he's calling you." Bartimaeus threw aside his coat. He jumped up and he came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked. "My rabbi," this blind man said, "I want to see." And Jesus said, "Go, your faith has healed you." And instantly the man could see, and he followed Jesus down the road. What do you want me to do for you? Can you imagine Jesus asking you that question? How would you answer it? I mean, think about that for a minute. How would you answer that? I think it's actually pretty important that we do think about how we answer this question, because it is very much on the table for you and I just as much today as it was for Bartimaeus back then. This question that Jesus is asking, just like last week, it's much deeper than it looks on the surface level. Jesus really wants to know how you're going to answer this question. What are your motives to your answer? What's your level of urgency? Are you persistent about this? Are you self-aware? James 4:3 talks about this a little bit more. He digs in. James says this: you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. Meaning you're not urgent. You're not persistent about your asking. And even when you do ask for what you want, you don't get it because your motives are wrong. All you want are things that give you pleasure. That's what James says. See, when we answer this question, hey, what can I do for you? What do you want me to do for you? A lot of times it's really easy to believe that, you know what, God, you're just this genie in a bottle. And me praying that's the equivalent of me rubbing on the lamp. It's so easy for us to do this, and it's easy to do without even realizing it, because if God really is real, if he really is real, if he really does love me like he says he does, like you say he does, Matt, well, then God should treat me like Robin Williams in Aladdin. He should just give me what I want. Man, we can fall into that so easily because our default motive to, hey, what do you want me to do for you? Our default motive a lot of the time is, I just want you to make me happy. That's what you can do for me, Jesus. Make me more comfortable. Make life easier for me. Make life more fulfilling. Can you just increase my happiness? That's what you can do for me, Jesus. That's what James is getting after. He's saying that's what we ask most of the time. Not all of the time, but the reason we don't get what we want is if we really boil down our motives, a lot of the time we're just asking for whatever's going to make us comfortable, whatever's going to make life easier, or whatever's going to give us pleasure. And the truth is, that is not at the top of God's list for what he wants to give you. He actually wants to give you something so much more. He wants to give you what will actually grow you and what you actually need. And this is where self-awareness really comes into play. Do you know what you need? Like what you really need? Do you know what you need? If you're blind, are you going to ask for a pair of skis? Like if you're blind, are you going to ask for a career as an airline pilot? Now maybe thinking about that sounds a little insensitive. Like, Matt, really? Do we need to talk about the obvious? I don't think so. Why are you stating the obvious? Well, that's my point, is I think a lot of times we just miss the obvious. We don't really know what we need. Jesus doesn't want to give us what we want, because if he just gives us what we want and he doesn't take care of our actual need, then he knows that's not helpful for us at all and it will get us nowhere. we don't really ask for what we need because a lot of the time, we don't know what we really need. That wasn't true about Bartimaeus, though. The guy knew exactly what he needed. He knew exactly what he needed, and he knew Jesus could give him exactly that. His sight would be his salvation. Without his sight, he's got very little hope. He needs sight to survive. He could see his need for Jesus because he couldn't see. He needed sight. So what do you really need? Like, what do you really need? If your faith is nothing more than viewing Jesus as the genie from Aladdin, that all you're ever going to ask for, if you do ask, all you're ever going to ask him for is whatever you want, whenever you want it. And that's what James says, you're not going to get it because you're asking with the wrong motives. You're asking for the wrong things. But once you see your need for Jesus, that changes everything. At that point, you start asking for what you really need. This is where self-awareness is key. What do you really need? And what I'm afraid of is that in the Western world where we live, I'm afraid we can't see what we need because we have everything. And maybe you want to push back on that. Like, Matt, what are you talking about? Have everything? Are you kidding me? Look, affordable housing, healthcare costs, inflation. Do I need to go on? I mean, there's a list that seems endless of things that are broken and messed up. What are you talking about? We don't have everything that we need. I get it. Like, I totally get it. Like, those issues are real. Those are affecting people on a daily basis. There's no joke about that at all. We all don't question any of that stuff. But if that's what we're talking about, those things, that just proves my point, that we do have everything. We might be talking about those things, but do you know what we're not talking about? We're not talking about people in northern Colorado having access to clean drinking water. That's not an issue for us. In fact, it was just a couple weeks ago because of a natural disaster, because of the fires. And I posted something on social media, sent out a quick email, and within a matter of hours, that lobby had a mountain of bottled water. Just took care of that need like that. Yeah, we're talking about rising costs in the grocery store. That's affecting everybody, and we're sick of it, right? That's what we're talking about. Food costs. You know what we're not talking about here? We're not talking about famine. That's not on the list. Every single day around the world, thousands and thousands of people die because of basic diseases that you and we could take care of just by going to Walgreens, buying some over-the-counter drugs. Every single day, millions and millions of people around the world don't have access to clean water. Millions and millions of people around the world every single day don't know where they're going to eat, if they're going to get to eat today. You and we just have to decide, do we want to eat leftovers or do we want to go out? In fact, about 1/3 of the global population, they make less money in a day than you and I will spend on Starbucks. And I don't say that to guilt any of us. Like, some people will try to shame you with that. That's not to be shameful. I mean, is it okay to buy coffee? Absolutely. It's not okay what they charge us. That's ridiculous. Starbucks, it's crazy. That's why I'm telling you, Dunkin' coffee's better. I'm just telling you. Man, it's totally fine that we can buy coffee. Should we be guilted about that? No. Should we be grateful for it? Absolutely. My point is, if you go home today, you have a home, you have a roof over your head. If you go home and look in your closet and you have more than one pair of clothes, if you go home and have a closet, you have a closet for your clothes. You have a room for your clothes. No, like, some people don't even have a room. We've got rooms for our clothes. You know what rich people have? Rich people have houses for their cars. You know what they're called? Garages, right? If you go home today and you look in your pantry, you look in your fridge and you got food, or you can just stop by King Soopers on your way home and get food, you have everything. We live in the richest country, not in just the world. This is fact. We live in the richest country in the history of the world. We have everything. And because of that, because we have everything, there are problems for sure. But because we have everything, what I'm scared of is that blinds us to be able to see what we really need. So when Jesus is asking this question, hey, what do you want me to do for you? Think about it. Like, what do you really need? And if you don't know, ask him. Jesus, what do I really need? What do I need to ask you for right now? If you don't have food, you know you need food. If you don't have water, you know you need water. If you don't have sight, you know you need sight. And maybe that's what we need right now more than ever. Maybe that's what we need. We need sight. Like we need sight. We need to see our own need for Jesus. And we need to see our own need for him. I need his grace. I need his forgiveness. I need his salvation. That's what I need. We need Jesus in our everyday lives. Sin equals death. That means I need his grace. I need his salvation. I need life that can only be found in Jesus. Do we see our everyday need for Jesus? We need sight right now so we can see what's actually going on in the world. What's actually happening? Where's this going? I've prayed this so many times over the last 2 years. If you go through one of my journals, you're going to see this over and over again. God, let me see what's really happening in the world. Can I see through all of the narratives? Let me see through the deception. Most importantly, God, let me see what you're doing. Let me see what you want. There's this really brief mention. It's almost like a little footnote in 1 Chronicles 12. It's verse 32. I have prayed this for years. It just says this. The men of Issachar is one of the 12 tribes of Israel. The men of Issachar, men who understood the times and they knew what Israel ought to do. Men who understood the times and they knew what Israel ought to do. I've asked Jesus to do that for me for years, and it's really ramped up the last 2 years. God, let me understand the times that I live in, and let me know what I should do. Let me understand the times that I live in and how that affects my wife and my kids. And let me know what I should do as a husband and a father. God, let me understand the times as a pastor at LifeBridge so I can know what LifeBridge should do. Let me understand the times as a leader so I can know what we should do. I've been asking for sight for years. And I'm not going to stop asking for it. We need it now more than ever because there are monumental shifts happening in the world right now. And you can sense it. You can see it too. Monumental shifts that have long-term implications that we don't know what they're going to be yet. I've got some thoughts. All kinds of shifts. In the Western world, there is deconstruction happening everywhere. We're trying to deconstruct sound theology and deconstruct the church, and what we've traded it for is political ideology. You know what the fastest growing religion in the United States is right now? Politics. But it should be the opposite. Forget politics. Let's get away from the politics and let's get back to building up strong, sound theology. Because you know what good theology is for? Who it's for? For everybody. Instead of deconstructing the church, God forbid, man, the church is needed now more than it ever has been. The church is for everyone. The church is God's people. We're meant to go out into the world and bless people, bring reconciliation and transformation, which everybody is hungry for. We're all starving for that. Why would we deconstruct the church? It's needed now more than ever. Do we need to reform things when we screw things up? Absolutely. But deconstruct? No. There's this emphasis on deconstructing truth right now, which I don't understand, because if something is true, you cannot deconstruct it, or it wouldn't be true. But whenever we try to deconstruct truth that's meant to bless you and everybody else, all we do is erode the foundation that's under our feet. Truth doesn't fall, we do. There's all kinds of shifts going on in the world right now, and we need to see it. Bartimaeus is asking for physical sight. I'm asking for spiritual sight, for wisdom, for discernment, for understanding, so we can understand the times and know what we should do. We need that now more than ever because it is so easy today to blindly follow the narratives in our world, whether they are true or false. It is so easy to blindly follow popular culture. It is so easy to blindly follow the crowd. It is so easy to blindly follow because of peer pressure. It is so easy to blindly follow because of cancel culture. It is so easy to blindly follow whatever the world tells you to do. It is so easy to blindly follow because we just want to blend in. I don't want the backlash. I don't want the resistance. I don't want to be canceled. So can I just blend in? But here's my question to the church. How can we blend in if we're called to stand out? We can't afford to blend in. The world can't afford for the church to blend in, now more than ever. We need sight. We cannot blindly follow the world anymore. Whether you are a Christian or you're not, we cannot blindly follow the world anymore. We can't blindly follow the crowd. You can't blindly follow Jesus either. You can't. Bartimaeus started following Jesus after he could see. Jesus says, hey, what do you want me to do for you? He says, Jesus, I want to see. Give me my sight. I want to see. He says it with such conviction, believing that Jesus is actually going to do it for him. So Jesus says, all right, because of your faith, you're healed. And then it says, instantly he could see. And here's the key. And he followed Jesus. That's the point. The reason he's asking Bartimaeus this question, the reason he's asking the same question to you is so he can give you what you need so you can go. If your answer to this question that Jesus asks you, hey, what do you want me to do for you? If your answer does not move you forward, if it does not grow you, if it does not make you look more like Jesus, if it does not push the gospel forward, if it does not bless other people, if it doesn't line up with God's will, we hit on that last week. Jesus says in John 15 that if you stay with me, if you stick with me, if you remain in me, if you follow me, then your prayers are going to be answered yes. Because the more you stick with me and follow me, the more your desires are going to transform into what God's will already is. So of course the answer is going to be yes, because all you're doing is praying God's will. But Jesus doesn't want to do anything for you that just lets you stay still. The reason we need sight is so that we can follow him. This blind beggar asked for sight so he could follow Jesus. That's the most important reason, is so we can follow him. But be careful with this. Like, don't blow this off. Don't think, you know what, hey, this isn't for me, this is for new people. People that are new to the church, people that are checking Jesus out for the first time, kind of figuring this whole thing out, like, do I believe or not? People that are just starting to follow Jesus. It's for the people that got baptized last week. It's not for me. I'm already advanced. I'm past this. This isn't for me. Asking for sight so I can follow. If that's you, be very, very careful. You might not blatantly say it that way. I'm overstating the point here. But if you think that in any way, this is for you more than it is for everybody else. Let me give you an example. The religious leaders in Jesus' day, they thought they could see. They thought they knew God's ways and they were following him impeccably. But do you know what Jesus called them on multiple occasions? He said they're blind. He said, you guys are blind. You've completely missed it. If you are a Christian, we need to be asking for sight all the time so that we can make sure we are following Jesus and not some version of Jesus that we've created in our own minds, or even worse, following a version of Jesus that we've created in our own image. It's incredibly dangerous. In this world, the blind lead the blind. You can see that happening right now, can't you? The blind lead the blind. So we need our eyes open and sight so we can follow the one living God who created the world. Be persistent about it too. Be bold. I mean, look at Bartimaeus. He's shouting on the side of the road, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. And people start yelling back at him. They're like, hey, be quiet. Shh, knock it off. Shh, be quiet. So I love this guy. He just starts yelling all the louder, son of David, Jesus, have mercy on me. The more they tell him to be quiet, the louder he gets. I'm cut from that same cloth. Like he and I, man, we're soulmates right there. I love that. He's persistent. But know this, the exact same thing is going to happen to you. The exact same thing is going to happen to you. When you're seeking Jesus, when you're calling out to him, when you're trying to find him and follow him, there will be people that tell you to be quiet. It may be literal. They may literally tell you to be quiet. But it might also be figuratively. So for you, who or what is going to tell you to be quiet when you're trying to get after Jesus? And it's not because you're talking about Jesus. It's not be quiet because you're talking about Jesus. Bartimaeus wasn't talking to his friends about Jesus. He's not preaching. He's just trying to get Jesus for himself. And they tried to stop him. So who or what is going to try to stop you and tell you to be quiet when you're trying to get Jesus for yourself? Is it going to be your family? That's painful. To get resistance from your family, for your family to push you away, to ostracize you, maybe to take little sarcastic jabs at you. Maybe it's your spouse. Maybe it's your parents, brother, sister, Who knows? That's painful. It's discouraging. Or maybe it's your spouse and they're just kind of apathetic. They're not engaging with you. Or they're pushing against you because of your relationship with Jesus. 1 Peter 3 talks about it. Peter's actually talking to wives at that point. There were so many women coming to Christ at the beginning of the church, just killing it. So Peter talks to these women. This is applicable to husbands too. He says, hey, your husbands that don't know Jesus, don't be discouraged by that. Keep following Jesus, keep growing. And by your good deeds, by your growth, your husbands might come to Christ because they see what he's doing in you and how you're serving him. Husbands, if your wife isn't tracking and you are, it's the same thing for you. But is it your family that's going to tell you to be quiet? Or make fun of you? What about your friends? That's pretty, if you get resistance from your friends, or they tell you to be quiet in some way or shape or form, or they disengage from you, that's a pretty lonely feeling, is it not? When you feel like you're losing friends, it's a scary moment. That was one of the hardest things for us when we moved out here almost 3 years ago. It wasn't the family aspect. We don't have any family here. We knew we'd see our family, and our family does a great job of traveling, so I wasn't worried about that. But we were leaving behind so many friends. That's a lonely feeling, is it not? And a verse that we've held on to this entire time and before we moved out here, Luke 18, Jesus says, I'm going to paraphrase it, anyone who leaves fathers or mothers or houses or lands or homes for my name's sake, and I go ahead and add friends into that verse myself, because the principle is true, Jesus says you'll be paid back 100 times in this life and in the age to come. So if you lose friends, if they tell you to be quiet and you just shout all the louder, Jesus says, I got you. I'll take care of that. But that's a pretty discouraging feeling when you feel like your friends have bailed on you. I know what that feels like. It's awful. And especially if you don't have family that live around here, your friends become your family too. And you get scared. Like, I don't want to lose them. Maybe I shouldn't call out to Jesus. Maybe I shouldn't fall. I don't want to stir up the waters. I can just go over here and be quiet about it and not let them know much about it. It's not how it works. He says, I got you though. I'll take care of this. Maybe it's the culture that tells you to be quiet. This is going to happen more and more. It might not be your family. It might not be your friends. But for all of us, it will be culture, for sure. I mean, we're quickly getting there in the United States. I think we're already there in Colorado, but the rest of the United States, we are quickly getting into a post-Christian era. I'm not scared of that though. It can be frustrating, it can be scary, but here's the thing. Whenever the world opposes the church, this is one of the reasons why I love history. You look at history, whenever that happened, the church, that's like throwing gasoline on a fire. The church explodes in a good way. But right now, the culture might call you because you follow Jesus, because you might call out to him, because you seek his truth, his word. The culture might call you a bigot. Or they might tell you that you're phobic of something. Or that you hate people. Or that you're a fool. This is the opiate of the masses, like Nietzsche said. Culture's going to push back on it. But I've told you guys this so many times, and as long as I'm the lead pastor here, I'm going to keep reminding you about this. No matter what gets pushed back on us, no matter what comes down the road, I've read the end of the book, and we win. We win. So don't let that scare you away. Or maybe it's yourself. Maybe you tell yourself to be quiet. I've got these aspirations, I've got this lifestyle I want to live, and it really kind of conflicts with Jesus, or I don't know what he's going to ask me to do. I don't know where he's going to tell me to go. I don't know what I need to turn away from. I don't know what I need to obey. I don't want to jump into that, so I'm just going to be quiet. I want to just be quiet. Let's chill out on this whole Jesus thing. Like, who or what is it that's going to tell you to be quiet when you're trying to get Jesus for yourself, when you're trying to follow him, when you're calling out to him? When that happens, when you're told to be quiet, either literally or figuratively, it is frustrating, it is discouraging, it can stir up doubt in you for sure. But when that happens, when you're told to be quiet, I just let that be a signal to you to be all the more persistent, all the more bold. That's not a call to be combative or obnoxious. Don't be that guy. But don't back down either. You cannot afford to blindly follow this world any longer. You don't want to go where it's going to take you. You don't want that road and you don't want that endpoint. What do you want me to do for you? Ask him to open your eyes. Ask him to let you see. Open my eyes so I can see and understand the times and know what I should do. Open my eyes so I can see what you're doing, God. Open my eyes to any spiritual blindness that I have. Open my eyes to any sin that's in my life. Open my eyes so I can see and follow you, Jesus, and be bold about it. Be persistent. Be urgent. Keep asking him. Man, I want to see. Open my eyes. Let me see. Be bold. Be convicted. Believe that you're going to get it when you ask, because Jesus says, according to your faith, you've been healed. Faith determines outcomes. The greater your faith, the greater the outcome. And the stuff we're talking about today is big stuff. It's big stuff. Spiritual sight, discernment, wisdom, understanding of what's happening, how to lead, having courage, having the boldness to keep going, to not be quiet when you're told, when you're yelled at. It's big stuff. So have big faith when you ask about it. Big faith that it's going to happen, that he's going to say yes to that. Big faith in the only one who can give that to you. That's the one true living God, Jesus Christ, who's the creator of this world. So right now, I'm going to just give you some time to just kind of reflect and just chew on this and think about it. Like, what do you really need? We're going to go into a time of communion where we get to reflect on that exactly. Because Jesus' body was broken, because his blood was spilt, we can ask for things like sight and can have it. We can know that, hey, we win in the end because of what Jesus has already done. So take some time and reflect on that. If you're not sure about communion, if you're new to all this, man, just think for a second, what do I really need? What do I really need? And a simple prayer that you can pray right now is, hey, Jesus, will you show me what I really need, and can I have it? If you know what it is, ask for that. And have the faith that he'll give it to you. So let's take some time and just be quiet and see what we really need and praise the God that gives it to us. Father, thank you so much for giving sight to the blind. Right now, would you give us sight to see what you're doing and what's happening in the world and what you're asking us to do and who you're asking us to be and where you're asking us to go. We give us the boldness not to back down when we're told to be quiet, that we wouldn't blindly follow the world, that we wouldn't blindly follow you, that we would have open eyes and go where you want us to go, Jesus. Go wherever you go. Whatever's going on in this room or online right now, Father, with people here, I pray that you would show them what they really need. Give them that blessing. Give them the courage and faith to ask you for it persistently with the right motive, and give it to them. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen.